Most lake boat buffs have heard about composite-hulled oarboats. For those of you who have not heard the term, a composite vessel is one that has an iron hull, but the bottom is sheathed in wood. I'd always thought that composite-hulled vessels were fairly common in the 1880s and 1890s. I was wrong. In fact, there are several commonly held notions about this class of vessel that are completely wrong. All of these boats lived a fairly long life, and you may be surprised at who the longest living one was. Now it's time to learn about composite hulls. The first composite vessel on the lakes was the Acadia, and she was actually not born on fresh water. In fact, the keel and frames for the boat were begun in early 1866 at a shipyard on the Clyde in Scotland. They were fully assembled and then taken apart and shipped to Zealand's shipyard in Hamilton, Ontario. There the keel was relaid in October of that same year. Over the winter of 1866-1867, the hull of the Acadia was completely reassembled, with the boat coming out in the summer of 1867. Her bottom had wooden planking that wrapped around the curve of the bilge where the iron plates of her hull began. Acadia had her bottom lined with wood for one very specific reason. Most boat nuts may not be able to guess that. You see, she was intended to serve the Canadian ports as far east as Montreal. And in order to do that in the mid-1860s, she would have to shoot the rock-lined rapids of the St. Lawrence River. In doing that, iron vessels often bumped into the rocks and boulders. Replacing those damaged and dinged bottom plates was expensive and laborious. Replacing wooden timbers, however, was cheap and easy. So the solution was to sheathe the boat's bottom with thick wooden planks, and the composite hull was born. A sizable number of Canadian passenger and package freight boats were given composite hulls for the same reason. In 1877, the composite hull came to the American side in a very big way. At the Detroit Dry Dock Company, the 250-foot-long passenger steamer City of Detroit was launched on December 22nd of that same year, and fit out for service over the following spring. Designed by the Kirby family, she featured a bottom sheathed in wood. It was stated that her composite feature was, quote, in consideration of shallow waterways, unquote. One thing that I had wrongly assumed was that there were a lot of composite hulls. In fact, there were only 9 composite bulk carriers, and nearly all of them came from the Detroit Dry Dock Company in Wyandotte, Michigan. The first was the Susan E. Peck. Constructed with the idea that she would actually be converted into a steam propeller, the Peck had a feature that differed widely from what I had always read and been told about composite hulls. She was not sheathed with wood up to the turn of her bilge. She was instead sheathed all the way up to her load line. And so were her 7 sisters. Want proof of that? Here we go. Take a close look at the Susan Peck. Notice the timbers from here down, and from here down. Now, the next of the composite steamers to come out of the Detroit Dry Dock Yard was the Fayette Brown, launched at 10 a.m. on Saturday, May 14, 1887. There are no real detailed photos of her showing her timbers. However, in this close-up, you can clearly see where her timbering stops and her plating begins. In this image of the E Peck, which was launched at 5 p.m. on the afternoon of Thursday, May 3, 1888, we can clearly see how high her oak timbering extends. If you read the Roman numerals on her bow, you'll see that at that point, her timbering rises a full 19 feet above her keel. Fourth of the composite bulk hulls was launched at 4 p.m. on Saturday, May 4th, 1889, just a year and a day after her sister. Her name was Manchester, and like her sisters, she was well timbered. Manchester went to scrap as the Yankonuck in 1959, and it can be seen here that she carried her hull sheathing timbers right to the end. In February 1889, the Thomas W. Palmer was launched as the first of what would be a triplet composite bulk carriers fleet coming out of the Detroit dry dock yard that year. The Detroit Free Press, however, decided not to print details of these, so I can't tell you the exact same time and day. She, according to most records, had steel upperworks above her oak timbers rather than iron. Additionally, she was 300 feet in length. In May of that same year, the Livingston was launched and was a near duplicate to the Palmer. She is seen here on March 11, 1916, in the Detroit Dry Dock shipyard. In this view, we see her stylish hull as having some work done on her timbers. Note that some of the timbers have been removed and are in the process of being replaced. Also notice that in the image, there are almost no shipyard workers at all. The reason for that is because they were all given time off to witness the launching of the lake boat George L. Eaton that same day. Finally, on Tuesday, June 25, 1889, the John Owen was launched and was of a very similar build to her two sisters. She would be the final composite bulk steamer of the 1880s. On Saturday, May 24, 1890, the S.R. Kirby was launched at the Detroit Dry Dock Shipyard. She was 311 feet long, which made her the largest of the composite freighters. The S.R. Kirby was also the first bulk carrier on the lakes to be equipped with electric lights, although passenger boats had had them for several years. She would be the last composite freighter to come out of the Detroit Dry Dock Shipyard. 7 years after the S.R. Kirby was launched, the final composite-hulled bulk freighter on the Great Lakes slid into the sawmill-lined waters of the Saginaw River. Launched at the West Bay City yard of F.W. Wheeler on Saturday, May 29, 1897, was the steamer Niagara. Unlike the Detroit dry dock boats, she was reportedly only sheathed in oak to the turn of her bilge. Although some may spread the myth that composite hulls were somehow inferior, we need to look at the overall lifespan of these boats. Susan E. Peck lasted until 1933, 46 years. Fayette Brown lasted until 1924, 37 years. E. Peck lasted until 1935, 45 years. Manchester lasted until 1959, 50 years. John Owen lasted until 1919, 30 years. Livingston lasted until 1927, 38 years. Thomas W. Palmer lasted until 1909, 20 years. S.R. Kirby lasted until 1916, 26 years. Niagara lasted until 1997, 100 years. It seems as if composite hulls worked quite well.